So now I'd like to invite Kevin Matthews here to speak. Kevin is a candidate for East Lane County Commissioner, and he's going to speak. I think he's going to speak on economics, I believe, but I'll let him decide what he's going to speak on.
Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for everybody who's here today to stand up for our forests. You've heard a lot of facts and philosophy and information, and I'm going to try to not repeat that stuff. So I'm going to start out and go pretty big, even bigger, and then I'm going to get pretty specific, and I think then we're going to wrap it up, right? So to go big, when Europeans first came to North America, there was old growth forest from New England through the Midwest all the way to the West Coast. I grew up thinking that giant trees were something special for the West Coast, and somehow there was something in just the Pacific Ocean. I don't know what it was, but somehow you have the sequoias and the redwoods, and a dim memory of the original Douglas firs that were cut around the turn of the last century, which were probably taller than the coast redwoods, probably the tallest trees on Earth. That sweep of forest across this country has been mowed down over the course of the history of this country. The forests of New England, with towering white pines several feet in diameter, were a strategic resource for the British Royal Navy that needed those great wooden masts for the instrument of projecting empire, which in those days was a sailing ship. Maine was the origin of the timber industry in the United States, which wasn't really even the United States in those days. By the time you get to the Civil War, the addition of railroads, steam engines, industrialization really starting to pick up speed, the timber industry had moved from Maine, and in this case, literally a lot of the workers were shipped from Maine to the Midwest, and a place called Stillwater, Minnesota, where the Missouri and Mississippi rivers meet, just north of there, was the epicenter of the timber industry. And before we started here, Denny saw one of those log trucks with some little scratcher sticks on it go by, and he said, "I'm from Wisconsin, and those logs would be big logs in Wisconsin." Well, Wisconsin and Minnesota used to be known as having endless forests of giant trees. Endless forests of giant trees. Well, those trees were cut rapidly to build the railroads and build the farm towns. The railroads brought grain back to the rivers and the cities of the East Coast, and the industrialization of the U.S. continued. And in that Midwestern area, a guy whose name we know around here well, his family name, Frederick Weyerhaeuser, got involved in the forest industry. And they kept moving west, and they kept running out of trees. And I think it's an interesting perspective, because what we are fighting for in Douglas County, in Lane County, what we are fighting for in Western Oregon is the last strip of trees. Is this going to end the way Richard suggested it might? That the trees are going to be gone, and that's one way that it will end. And that's the way that industry is headed. That's the way they're built to operate. Or are we going to take command of how we live on our planet in this 21st century? And are we going to stop the logging while we still have old growth forest? If you go to Google Maps, probably a lot of you have done this because you're all forest, you care about the forest. You go to Google Maps, go to Roseburg or Eugene, zoom out a little bit, move out into the countryside in either direction. Just looking at Google Maps, you see the checkerboard pattern. There are tan squares and green squares. The tan squares are the squares of industrial forest land, which has been strip mined over the last decades till there's just about nothing left. The green squares are the BLM squares. Now, those lands have been heavily logged, most of them, very much of them. But compared to the private industrial land, the BLM lands are a sanctuary. There's a rule of thumb in ecology that ecosystems are natural ecosystems that have a lot of biodiversity and a lot of inherent redundancy, they tend to be more resilient than people think as they get damaged over and over again, disturbed by wildfire, disturbed by humanity, up until a certain threshold. And that threshold depends on how you measure it, and somewhere around 75% plus or minus disturbance, the ecosystem that looked especially resilient flips its state, and it becomes really fragile. Ecosystems go into a collapse, a change of state from which they can't really recover. Our forests in Western Oregon are poised around that place. The half of the checkerboard, which is industrial timberland, has been harvested down to 10% of the remaining ecosystem value. The BLM forest has been harvested down to, I don't know what the number would be, but 40 or 50% of the ecosystem value, maybe less. You average those together, and we're at about 75% impact optimistically to the checkerboard. So then you have this DeFazio bill come down the path. Because the industry has overcut their own wood, they're drooling at the sanctuary, which is the public lands, and they'll do almost anything to get virtually free, super cheap access to that wealth on the public lands. And we're the ones who stand between them and pulling that off. And now to be specific, in the political fight over this, right now, Ron Wyden is the guy. DeFazio has done everything he can. His bill has gone through committee. It's been attached to the crazy House Republican massive privatization of public lands bill, and that will probably pass the Republican House. It'll never pass in the Senate. So Wyden, who has just recently, as you probably know, become chair of the House of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, is in the driver's seat to try to create some kind of compromise. So he's our guy. It's our forests and it's our senator. This is the pivot point. Lane County and Douglas County are the biggest sawlog producing counties and the biggest sawlog producing state in the country. We're the last of the great temperate rainforest. Our guys are there. They're Democrats. DeFazio, Wyden, Merkley, Kitzhaber, Obama. Those were the best people we had to vote for when we went to the ballot and voted. They're completely screwing it up. I want to use scatological language to describe what's going on right now. What I suggest you want to say to Ron Wyden, I suggest you do want to say something to Ron Wyden by email, through their website if they've got the comment form fixed, through their phone numbers, so on. Through letters to the editor is great. I'm an Oregon voter, and I don't want increased logging. Increased logging is not the solution to our problems. What the DeFazio bill and Wyden's public statements and Kitzhaber's public statements and even the bogus Green Group Coalition for Our ONC Lands, what they all have in common is they say we want increased logging. We have to have increased logging to solve this problem, that problem, the other problem, some other problem. The jobs, county payments, fires, whatever it is. Just like our timber counties, our forest-dependent counties are being held hostage by the timber industry to try to squeeze access to the public lands out of us. The same thing is happening. So tell Wyden, don't want increased logging. That's the litmus test. That's the threshold. If we're going to increase logging on this ONC forest that's at the threshold of collapse, we're going to push it off a cliff. It's going to be over. Because of climate change, we actually need to be doing everything we can to back away from that cliff. And the forest, just leaving the forests alone and letting them restore themselves, or having public investment in restoring the forest, will help us with climate change, will help us back off from that cliff. And in a few years, when we have some kind of reasonable price on carbon, the value of our intact native forest and sequestering carbon, the cash value is actually likely to be far more than the tree value. Just in terms of cash, let alone the incalculable value of the water and other ecosystem services. So right now at the pivot point, contacting Wyden is a real thing. As the speakers before me said, we have so many different layers. There's the taxes, the Oregon Forest Practices Act. Lord knows we've spent enough time trying to reform the BLM, even though the BLM's lands are sanctuaries compared to the industrial timberlands. They're heavily damaged compared to the potential of those ecosystems, compared to the survival of the salmon and 300 other threatened species in those forests. So I think we need to use the democratic process. We need to use every process we can, but one of the processes that we have available that we need to use is the democratic process. So if Peter DeFazio and John Kitzhaber and Ron Wyden all want increased logging, and they were all the best Democrats that we had available to vote for when we went to the ballot box, we need better candidates to run. And I've made the commitment myself to step up and run against a timber heir in East Lane County, which is the biggest timber producing district in one of the biggest timber producing counties in this country. And we need to step up. We need to not just run because we're saying the right things. We need to run professional campaigns. We need to take back our county commissions. We need to reform the taxes. We need to take our counties, instead of our counties operating as branch offices of big timber, we need our counties to operate as beachheads for the new sustainability that will allow us to prosper in the 21st century. Let's get out there and do it. Thank you.
Daniel Robertson. Thank you for speaking, Dan.
Good afternoon. I just have three things I want to say. First, I want to thank Cindy and everyone who put this day together. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see an opportunity for those of us who want to see our ONC lands treated with respect stand here and say so in Roseburg, Oregon. I really appreciate that. Secondly, I want to point out that amongst us here are people who are volunteers for Umpqua Watersheds, members of its board, volunteers and staff people for Cascadia Wildlands, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the board of Oregon Wild. Those organizations are out there every day sending out emails, sending out texts, sending out Twitters, trying to get people across the state to respond to what's going on in our community and the ONC lands. And I want you to support them. Support them in the way you're doing right now as volunteers, or if you believe the ads that Healthy Forests are running on KQEN radio right now, us conservation organizations have millions of dollars that we're spending to fight the DeFazio plan. Make that true, will you? We would love to be able to spend those millions of dollars to defeat this plan. And lastly, I want to just compliment what was just said. We absolutely must follow through with the political process right now. We really need to be contacting Ron Wyden. We need to be doing it every day. And once is not enough. I mean, make it a daily chore. Get up in the morning and email Ron Wyden's office. And get up in the morning and call him. If you're using working assets, it's a free phone call. Call him every day. Write a letter. Write a letter to the editor. And additionally, I want to compliment what was said earlier. We need to make Peter DeFazio understand that there is a political cost in supporting a bill like he's put forward in the Congress. And the place that we really need to make him understand that that cost exists is in Lane County. So letters to the editor in the Register Guard, in the newspaper in Cottage Grove, in Eugene Weekly, get the word out so that Peter can hear that people are upset with him about this because he doesn't think they are. He doesn't think we care. And if he can show that we don't care, Senator Wyden doesn't think we'll care either. So it's important to work that political process now. Work the political process, support your environmental organizations, your conservation organizations, Umpqua Watersheds, Cascadia Wildlands, and Oregon Wild, and get out there and work to make our voice heard as loud as that industry that really is spending millions of dollars to get this bill passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, very much. I'd also like to call up Patrick Quinn to speak. Before he comes up here, though, I wanted to mention something about what Daniel just talked about. Over here on this table, I have a camera and for a few kerchiefs for those of you who are family farmers like me, or if you raise your own food at home, you depend on the water from the mountain. I'm going to ask to take pictures of people doing an American Gothic. I've got a pitchfork over here and buckets. And I want to take those pictures, and you'll sign up on a sheet there, your name, address, phone number, email, all the contact information. And then we're going to make postcards out of those with statements on the back, which I think should be as simple as don't increase logging on public lands, and send them to Wyden and DeFazio's office. So please, before you leave, take a picture with somebody as American Gothic, and we'll send that. And here's Patrick Quinn.
Thanks, Cindy. Let me take off this hat and speak first as the volunteer conservation chair for Umpqua Watersheds right here in Roseburg, and say we unequivocally are against the DeFazio, Schrader, and Walden plan. Let there be no mistake. At the same time, we place great hopes in the courage and commitment of Senator Ron Wyden to do something to counteract this dystopian proposal. We ask him to stand up and be as courageous in this issue as he has been in the NSA scandal, where they're listening and spying on us every time we pick up the phone. He has stood up, and we want him to stand up again. We're placing our hopes in him, politically speaking. Another point that's important to me, Umpqua Watersheds, and I know our sister organizations, we are not a no-cut organization. We are not opposed to all logging. We like to be able to buy a board when we need one too. But we do not like the way things are done under the aegis of the Oregon Forest Practices Act. Now I'm going to put my other hat on. I'm a member of the Executive Council of the Coquille Watershed Association, representing Camas Valley, their riparian interests. And it does not take a degree from the state university or anywhere else to go up on the ridge west of Camas Valley and to see that, to see what is being done, what has been done, and what is proposed for our precious watersheds, to see that and not know that it does nothing but degrade them over and over again, turning those lands into moonscapes that are soaked once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times with poisons. Poisons like 2,4-D, the bastard child of Agent Orange, like atrazine that was developed in Switzerland. You can't use it in Switzerland. It is banned throughout the European Union. It is toxic, and they spray it. They spray it in our water. They use it more and more because glyphosate, Roundup, is less and less effective. They need to move to stronger stuff. What is sustainable about that? And this is what Congressman DeFazio proposes for a huge swath of our own sea lands? No. I'm going to close with this. At our Coquille Watershed Association meeting at the end of August, we had a presentation about this same issue from American Rivers. There were loggers there. There were all kinds of people there. Bob Main, the Coos County Commissioner, was there. And everyone said their piece, pro and against. The last one to speak was Paul Heckler, representative on the Coquille Watershed Association for commercial fishermen, himself a retired biologist. And he said an informal survey he had just done up and down the coast, Washington, California, Oregon, among commercial fishermen. This is shaping up to be one of the better ocean salmon seasons in many, many years. He said, for God's sake, they're buying new pickups in Charleston. This is something you weren't seeing for a long time. They're hiring, they're refitting their boats, they're making money. And as Paul said, this can be directly attributed, in large part, yes, to the efforts of the watershed associations, but also to the aquatic conservation strategy of the Northwest Forest Plan that includes large tree buffers, not the miserable 20 feet that the Oregon Forest Practices Act puts on their lands. Fish-bearing streams, 20 feet, baloney. Baloney. They make zero contribution on those lands to habitat. Zero. Paul Heckler turned to Commissioner Bob Main, who pushes for this plan and for that pipeline. And he said, Commissioner, these commercial fishing jobs and recreational fishing jobs are good paying jobs we have here now. And it would be a damn shame to let them wash out to sea with the mud that'll come off those clear cuts. If they pass that bill, let's get on the legislature and the governor to take the beaver off the great seal of the state of Oregon and replace it with a goddamn stump.
Yeah.
Woo! There's a fire. Okay, I'd like to have one more person come up. It was our financial supporter for this project, and have her make a statement. And then I ask everybody if two things. One, I'd like you all to come up here, including signs and everything, so that we can get us all together on this video. And also, please grab a partner after that and get your picture taken up here and write your name, address, contact information on that form so that we can send that, a packet of postcards, up to Wyden and DeFazio from this rally. That way we're getting a whole lot of energy coming out of this rally. So, Alicia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alicia from Medicine Flower, and I really want to thank everybody for turning to showing up for this cause, because it is so important for our future, our immediate future, and generations after us. I'm going to keep it brief because I just wanted to say we really need to become independent from the timber industry and find other alternatives that are sustainable. One of the reasons why we moved into this area after a lot of research was because it was pristine, and we could make a difference by supporting sustainable agriculture. So with that, as a growing company in the organic industry, I wanted to be surrounded by nature, and I wanted to help to preserve our forests. Well, actions speak louder than words, and we're here doing it. So the other thing I wanted to quote something from Grandma Aggie was that we are the voice for the voiceless. So let's create some cottage industry that's sustainable and gives the future generations something to look forward to. So thank you really so much for being here, and support all the different companies, Oregon Wild, Cascadia Wildlands, and all the people that are protecting our forests. Thank you.
Okay, so if everybody would gather around here. Oh, well, I should ask. Open mic. Anybody else would like to come up? Come on up. We'll spend about 5 minutes here. We've got plenty of time. So 5 minutes.
Hi there. I'm Mary Grace with Cascadia Forest Defenders. I see a few of my brethren, siblings out there. And I just wanted to say how thrilled we were as a group to hear about this rally. It was just wonderful to see other people, just ordinary citizens, getting out there and saying, "Oh no, don't take our forest. We love our forest. We want clean water. We want clean air. We want trees, vertical in the ground." And we're currently involved in a tree sit east of Myrtle Creek at the White Castle Timber Sale, which is a Norman Jerry show, which may be our Senator Wyden's answer to DeFazio's egregious ONC bill. So far, Wyden has endorsed this at a couple of press conferences that he thinks Norman Jerry really have some great pilot projects. So again, I want to adjure you to please call Ron Wyden's office and tell him you want more trees and you don't want more logging, and that Norman Jerry is still their Norman Jerry show is still a clear cut. A small, sloppy clear cut is still a clear cut. And what we want is forests for our state, for all of the creatures that live in them, and for our future. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's all gather around here if you would, please. What? I missed somebody? Come on. Thank you for pointing that out. I hate it when I miss somebody.
I just want to say thank you for all of you being here right now, and I feel really blessed to be here. I've been spending some time because a family that lives here grew up here in this amazing paradise that Umpqua is, and this whole world. But I wrote a poem this morning, and I wasn't really planning on sharing it here, except I'm just so inspired by everyone who's speaking and all of us being here, so I want to share it. I'll just have to find it. I also want to say that I've never been part of a protest in a way like this, because I feel like cutting trees down because I wrote on paper, but at least we're trying. So who cuts the trees down? But all of us together as we buy the paper to write, rewriting and to blame, all part of the game, and everything affects everything. But can we slow down? Clear cutting isn't dancing, it's destroying. And we can't be distracted, not to notice, to listen to the feeling burning in our one heart, beating with the earth for a new way of communing, using what we truly need without this greed, to slow down, look around, touch the sacred ground we walk. Once upon a go time, the abundance is still here if we continue. Unconsciously it's gone along with you. Selective cutting can be a dance with the earth. Clear cutting is rape. Greed, what do we truly need to breathe? Well, that's our lungs, the trees. It's time to be conscious of all our actions. For this life we have been blessed for the past and future generations. Thank you all. Love you.
Hi, Forest Web's videoing this. We'll be putting up segments of it on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get it edited and put up. Anybody that spoke today, if you can stop by and see me, give me your name and organization affiliation so we can have the correct spelling and who's doing what, would be really great. And like she said, we'd like everybody to come up and put together their signs and show their solidarity and get some of that for the video too. That'd be great. Thank you.
We've got another person that would like to speak.
Hi, I'll make this fast. My name is Gary. I'm one of the few Occupy Roseburg people left. So I'm the only one here today. I keep finding out about these things at the last minute. I don't know why that is, but we fully support this. And a couple of us have visited the tree sitters, and we just want to say, at least I do anyway, thank you so much for what you guys are all doing and what they're doing up there. That that's really impressive. Really impressed when we saw that.
I would really highly recommend everybody go look at Buck Rising up North Myrtle Road so you can see what the Norm and Jerry timber sales look like after they're cut, and then go up to White Castle, and Unit 8 is an excellent example of something.
It's section 25 on the BLM map. It says Unit 8 on the tree. And if you want a personal guide to section 17, call me.
And I highly recommend everyone go up and look at the White Castle tree sit, talk to those folks, bring them some produce. It's not that often we have a tree sit in our own backyard, and it is very impressive. So please go on up and visit the tree sitters in the White Castle timber sale. I can help anyone find directions up there, and you just heard you had a guide over there. So.
Also, support them with food, supplies, anything they can use to keep those kids up there. They really need the help. They'll take money. They're not proud. Also, if you do want to hear about things like this rally, you can sign up on Forest Web's email list, and we try to promote these kind of things so we get notices out, so you'll be in touch with what's happening.
Because of the tree sit up there, the BLM has proposed a closure of the entire area on White Rock to Red Top Pond. They're proposing to close it to all human access except for the tree cutters for 2 years. So if you want to go up to Red Top Pond, if you want to go enjoy your public forest, this forest up there is one of BLM's rare places that's not checkerboard. It's a solid, there's beautiful old growth up there, and going up there and take a visit, because BLM, by the end of September, they're going to make a decision on whether or not to close it to all human access. So go now, don't miss it.